What's up, Liverpool fans? Welcome back to Yanks to the Cop. With a nice long international break at hand, we figured we'd come drop a little bit of a special episode. We're going to do our all-time Premier League 11. So we're going to name our starting lineup, 5 bench players, and the manager of the club. As always, we're your hosts, Stephen Wahomey, and today we have a very special guest. You can find him on Twitter at Sir_NTO. We have our good buddy. He's been dying to come on the podcast. We finally got him on. So happy to bring him on. And Dobago, thanks for joining us, man. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me. Wahami knows that it's been a while now.
Yeah. And, no better episode to have you on. This one's going to be a ton of fun. Everyone in the chat, we appreciate you guys. And please let us know your teams as well. And give us your thoughts on our selections. So, ultimately, what we decided was we're going to go with a 4-3-3 formation. I think you could have done a 4-3-3 or a 4-4-2, and I think the teams would have been a lot different. But we're going to go with the 4-3-3. We're going to start with the goalkeepers, work our way up to the forward line, and then we'll get into the bench players and then the manager of the club. So, fellas, let's kick it off with the starting goalkeeper for the all-time 11 team. For me, it came down to 2 different guys. I had 2 guys, and I was going back and forth. I have my decision, but I want to start with Endobago. Who you got? Who is your starting goalkeeper for the Premier League 11?
It was a tough choice between. I thought of Prime De Gea, around 2010, 2011, around those times. But then my choice for the goalkeeper came down to Peter Schmeichel.
Yeah, I think when you're thinking about goalkeepers, you're thinking about Schmeichel in the early days, maybe Seaman, De Gea, Czech, maybe Van der Sar. Thinking about Tim Flowers was quite good at Blackburn. Can't think of it. Was there any other top keepers? So I think for me, when I look at all of those people, my goalkeeper I think is Czech, because I think the impact he had at Chelsea was outstanding. I think he was phenomenal when he joined the Premiership. He won countless of titles with Chelsea, and he was still doing it well into his late age. And I thought when I think about goalkeepers, I think there's a period where he was just phenomenal. He was part. I think Chelsea still, with him in goal, has still got the best, lowest clean sheet record ever in the Premiership.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of goalkeeper, I have to go for Czech. There's some great goalkeepers, and obviously I was pressed thinking about Van der Schmeichel. I think he was very good, and it is hard, but I'd go for Czech.
All right, so when I originally thought about this, a lot of names came to mind. Schmeichel and Czech for me were the 2 hardest ones to decide between. I thought those 2 were the clear cut. But then, like you said, Wahomey, I also thought of Van der Sar. He popped in my head. De Gea popped in my head. But for me, I think for me it's going to be Schmeichel. So I'm going to lean Schmeichel. It was so hard. It almost came down to a coin flip for me, because obviously Czech in his Chelsea days, he was part of the amazing Mourinho teams. Played with John Terry, had a tremendous defense in front of him. But for me, it just has to come down to Schmeichel. I still see highlights to this day about some of the saves that he's made and the impact that he had on that Manchester United team. At the beginning of the Premier League era. So for me, it's going to be Schmeichel, but it was a very, very close one. Could have gone. I think it could have gone either way between Czech and Schmeichel. So I'm going to go Schmeichel for me. Awesome. So moving into defense, let's start with right back. Right back, there was a couple. Again, for me, I think it only really came down to 2 different guys for me, but I'm really interested to hear from you guys. So, Wahomey, why don't you start this time? Why don't you give us your starting right back?
So when I think about right backs, I think about probably Gary Neville, Zabaleta, Who else was like a right back in that period? Like, when you think about Premiership?
Honestly, like he didn't make my team or the bench, but the one other guy I was thinking about was like I think he deserves a shout as Bilaquota. I thought he was pretty solid, especially early on with Chelsea. So I thought about him. He didn't make my team or my bench, but it was just a name that he deserves to be put into the conversation.
Did Arsenal have any good right backs that we can think of when one?
Yeah, I actually have an Arsenal right back.
Who?
Oh, yeah, who you got?
Yeah, I decided to go with Lee Dixon.
Oh,
so yeah, Lee Dixon. Yeah, he was good, Lee Dixon. Ivanovic as well. Yeah, Ivanovic is also a good right back.
Yeah.
Tough one. I think personally for me, I'm going to go with Gary Neville because I think what he won at Man United and all the success he had at Man United, and he did it over such a long period. And I think for me, Gary Neville did it in a harder period because he faced harder players in his day. You know, because I think Gary Neville was probably like the cross 90s into the Premiership era. And I think there were more better players around that era that he faced. Because you remember, like Gary Neville was facing like players like Nedved in his prime. You know, all those kind of players like Redondo, all those kind of players. So, you know, Lauren's a good shot as well. But I'll go with Gary Neville. Right back.
all right. So we got Dixon and we got Neville. Some of you guys. Yeah, in the chat. This is before I give my shout out to the chat. Chris Welch, you are a legend, man. Thanks for joining us again. I won't do this stream because at least one Liverpool player gets in. You're damn right. And we all know who the Liverpool player is going to be, too.
Yeah.
So that's perfectly fine. Duke Burns, thanks for joining us, man. This is his team. Czech, Zabaleta, Terry, Vidic, Cole, Ronaldo, Gerrard, Lampard, Giggs, Rooney, Shearer.
Pretty tight.
It's a very good team. And I think that's more of a 4-4-2 lineup, which is totally fine. Very good team. I have a lot of similar names in my team. We'll see how it shakes out. Good shout with the Ivanovic as well. He was spot on when he was playing. That's for sure. And Lauren, we talked about Lauren. He was a good fit. For me, I had Dixon on my list. I had Neville on my list. I had Zabaleta on my list.
Yeah, Zabaleta.
But for me, I ended up going with Gary Neville. I mean, he was literally on those Manchester United teams that were almost unbeatable in the Premier League, just championship after championship. And he was just, I mean, when you think about just like a complete right back, he was the definition of a complete right back, like so solid defensively, great leader for Manchester United. And going forwards, he could handle his own, put some dangerous crosses in, and wasn't a bad dribbler either. So I think when you think about that perspective, I just think he was an absolute complete player, and just the trophies to go with it. I think he earns that starting spot at right back for my team. So
yeah, I think yeah, it's a difficult one because obviously people might look at Neville and think, okay, he wasn't the most spectacular player, but he was solid, Mr. Reliable, 7, minimum 7, 8 week in, week out. And that's the thing. Like, you have to rate the fact that he had a good partnership with Beckham. There was that right hand flank with him and Beckham was phenomenal. So I think when you think of other players, they did do well, like Ivanovic and Aquila and Zabaleta. I think you just have to remember that period when Man United dominated the Premiership, Neville was outstanding.
Mm-hmm. Well, and before we go on to the center backs, since we are Liverpool fans, did you guys even consider putting Trent into your team?
The reason why I didn't put Trent in, because I think he's not done it long enough. And the reason why I'm not having certain Liverpool players in it, because I haven't done it long enough. I don't think you could have a player that's probably Trent's done it 2 years. We're talking about players who've done it 6 or 7 years, and they've done it consistently back to back. They've been part of back-to-back teams that won premierships over and over again. I don't think it's fair to have someone who's done it over two years in the team. As good as Trent's been, I get he's broken all these assist records and he's been phenomenal, but I just don't feel that he's done it over a significant long period to say he was better than Gary Neville.
Yeah.
You think the same thing, Davies?
Yes, I think the same. We'll talk about Trent maybe 10 years from now. Then he'll be in our team. But then He just needs time. He's still creating the records now. Still building up his career. He's still very young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when we talk, like you said, I think when we talk, if we have this conversation again in 5 years, I think we'll probably be seeing him in the list somewhere. I mean, in the fact that he's still only 21 years old, like he could have another decade plus in the Premier League. So, but Luke Burns, this is where it's going to get interesting, in my opinion. Is there's so many names at center back. You got Rio, Kara, Company, Stam. The list goes on.
And Tony Adams, he was very good at Arsenal.
Adams, very good. I mean.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it, Van Dijk. I'm just going to put his name out there. I don't think he's done it long enough, but I'm just saying, talent-wise.
I had a debate offline about having Van Dijk in the team, and I said he doesn't make my team. And I was like, obviously, it's hard to say Van Dijk doesn't make the team, but I just feel like 2 years or 2 to 3 years is not significant enough to say he's had the same impact like a John Terry or Rio Ferdinand or Vidic. Because I think they just did it over a longer period of time. Yeah. Obviously Van Dijk individually is good as them, but I think to having the team, the Premiership team all time, I think it's a bit unfair on like a Ferdinand or Vidic or Terry, who won countless titles, Champions Leagues. I think it's unfair to say he would be. No, forget the Champions Leagues. It's unfair to say he'd be in it over players who won like 4 or 5 Premierships in a row.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think. Ian Francis, Virgin center back in the Prem has ever seen. He probably is talent-wise. I mean, but he just hasn't done it long enough, I think, or have enough accolades quite yet. I mean, obviously, second place in the Ballon d'Or is pretty impressive. But I will say, though, he was world-class at Southampton his last season there, too. So it hasn't been just two years. I think it's been like 3 or 4 years for Van Dijk. But still, you compare him to Terry and those guys. But Luke Burns makes a great point. We didn't even talk about Ben Davies. I mean, come on, guys. Like Ben Davies, he's Liverpool legend. Ben Davies, locked in the basement. He definitely deserves a nod. But no, I'll start. Oh, good.
So what's going to be a debate? Who's going to be a captain? That's going to be a debate.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Wow.
Because who was captain? Who you think might not be my captain either? Because I actually think when you think about captains. While he was captain for Liverpool, I don't think he was as good as captain as other people who were around at his time in that era. I don't hold him the same level as say Roy Keane. I think Roy Keane was a better captain than Steven Gerrard.
Bite your tongue. You slander Steven Gerrard's name in front of me. No, but all right, let's get to it. So I'll give both of my center backs. So for me, I think it came down to a few different guys. Let me get my list here. Sorry. So, some of the guys that I was thinking about, John Terry, Rio Ferdinand. I'll say Vidic, but I didn't even consider Vidic in my opinion. Van Dijk, Vincent Kompany. Those were the main names that stuck out to me. But overall, my partnership is going to be Terry and Ferdinand. I just think both those guys, all the accolades, all the trophies, part of some of the best teams that we've seen in the Premier League. John Terry was a fantastic captain that we were just talking about with Chelsea, who was part of that 05 team that has the record for least amount of goals conceded. And then Rio Ferdinand, I think, would be, again, all the accomplishments, but also just his style of play, I think, would fit next to John Terry perfectly. Another guy he's good in the air, but he's very good with his feet as well. So Terry and Ferdinand are my 2 center backs for the team.
Yeah, I think for me, I have Terry and Ferdinand too. The reason why I have Terry and Ferdinand, I think even when Ferdinand left Leeds for big money move to United, I was gutted because I was thinking like he would have been amazing at Liverpool. Obviously we couldn't compete United back then in terms of attracting a player like Ferdinand or with the finances, but I thought like Ferdinand was outstanding, and that the fact that he was so good over such a long period of time. He had it all. He was strong, quick. He was good in the air. Yeah. He was a leader. He held his own against the best players in the world. But obviously towards the end of his age, he got done by certain players. You could talk about Torres destroying him in the FA Cup, but he held him off. But I think that's towards the Ferdinand's latter stages of his career. He was getting older. But in his prime, he was outstanding. And I think John Terry as well, he epitomizes what Chelsea was. He Chelsea through and through. He was just a leader. He performed countless times with Chelsea over and over again against the best. He scored loads of goals from set pieces. And he was just, when you thought about that Premiership era when Mourinho came, you think about Terry. That's the first thing that comes to mind. You think of Terry because you think of how dominant that Chelsea backline was. How hard it was to score against them to even beat them.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel that when I think about the two best, I think Vidic's a good shout. I did think Vidic was very good. I know people talk about the Vidic Torres thing where he got embarrassed in the 4-1 defeat, and that did hurt Vidic. Yeah, and also Eto'o destroyed him in the Champions League final where he done him. But Vidic was good. We can't take away the amount of trophies Vidic won, and the stats back it up. He was phenomenal centre back. And obviously the other players that we said before, Company, we're missing Company. But I just feel like Ferdinand Terry was it's a dream partnership.
I agree. What do you got, Indobago?
First, let me talk about Vidic.
Yes.
He was absolutely ugly to play against. He was ready to do everything. He was so aggressive with the way he defended. He was difficult to play against. So at first, with my centre-back partnership, I had Vidic and Terry. I think Terry is everyone's choice, is Mr. Chelsea. Is what he represented Chelsea at that time. But then in place of Vidic, I think I'll go with Vincent Kompany.
Why Company?
Kompany was, there was a period of time where Kompany was the best. He set the bar for centre backs in the Premier League. In the way he led the team, the Man City team, in games when they were slacking, he'd get the goals, the last minute goals. I remember, the title charge right now that we missed out on. He's he's just there. He was their go-to guy, even in the closing stages of his career. He was still their go-to man, and with the leadership skills that he showed too for Manchester City were brilliant. And they felt his loss when he left.
That's so true. I think you're spot on with that assessment. Like Vincent Kompany, especially, I would say, probably early 2010s to up until a few years ago, he was the standard. He was our version of Van Dijk, because I think Luke Burns says, Kompany made Lescott play like Maldini. he hit a lot of Lescott's the negative stuff about his play, but Kompany was just, again, another just all-around player. And when you think about that goal he scored to kind of secure Man City to beat us that championship year, I think I don't think he could ever do that again. But B, that's just the type of player he is. When they needed him the most, he stepped up and delivered, and that's just the leader that he is. And honestly, I would even entertain people if they said that they wanted Kompany to captain this team, because I think he was just that good. He was that solid. He was that reliable. So yeah, Kompany, great shout. He's actually on my bench, but we'll get to that later, obviously. But I thought that's an awesome choice there. So to round out the defense, let's go with our left back selections. So Indobago, your turn. Why don't you start us off with your left back?
There's only one left back that we all chose. That's Ashley Cole.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, literally the standard of left backs in the Premier League. I honestly, honest to God, the only other name that could even come up with for world class left back is Evra. Yeah, he was the only other one I could even think about putting in there. But I think Ashley was so much.
Owen.
What?
Someone said Dennis Irwin.
Who?
Dennis Irwin.
Oh, Dennis. Sorry, you kept breaking up Michael Owen. I was like, "What the frick are you talking about?"
He was very good on United. They won loads of titles with him.
Yeah, I think just individually though, Ashley Cole. he was kind of like the first wave of these like super guys who could be like they attack and help. Like he was really the first wave of that in the Premier League. Ian, I really appreciate you saying John Onorisa. He's obviously close to our hearts, obviously as Liverpool fans, but it's got to be Ashley Cole.
Yeah, I remember when I think it was for England, Cole marked out Ronaldo when England played Portugal in his back pocket, and that was Ronaldo like before he went to, like in his prime at Man United, and it was like it was like can Ashley Cole keep up with Ronaldo, and it was like the whole game Ronaldo couldn't get out of a shadow, just had him in his back pocket. Yeah. They even gave like a wink to the bench to say, I've got him, don't worry about it. Like so. Yeah, Cole was phenomenal. Like, he was outstanding at Arsenal. Then he went to Chelsea, got even better. So, you can't. Yeah, like I said, there's only one left back. It's Cole.
Yeah. Any shout for Jose Enrique?
Jose Enrique, let's go. I will say, Enrique did have that one good season with us. He was really good.
Yeah, he was really good that one season.
Really, really good. I remember when after that season, we were like, "Oh, we're set at left back," and then he has completely nosedived the following year. But also Luke Burns with the shout for Samikas again, another guy. Man, if he can get out of that beat, he can get out of that beat.
I'm gonna put in the Sting Beyondby.
Yeah. Awesome. So. Well, that rounds out the defense. So just before we get into the midfield here, Wahomie's team so far, he's got Petr Cech, Gary Neville, John Terry, Rio Ferdinand, and Ashley Cole. And Nobego's got Schmeichel, Dixon, Terry, Company, and Cole. And I have Schmeichel, Neville, Terry, Ferdinand, and Cole. So far, none of us have the same team. I love that so far. I'm going to post all 3 of our teams on Twitter and get some feedback from everybody out there. So this is going to be fun. But now going to the midfield. Let's go with your midfield. Who you guys have as your 6, as your holding midfielder?
Yeah. So my DM, it's tough because when I think of DMs, I'm thinking Vieira, Keane. Those are the titans. Those are the big guys that set the benchmark of what a DM was, the rivalries. And I think who else was anyone? The Man United had Keane for ages. Probably Essien was very good at Chelsea.
Yeah,
but maybe Makelele was outstanding at Chelsea for that period.
Makelele, yeah.
Again,
this guy didn't sniff my team, but would you even give a shout to a guy like Carrick, or do you think he was more of like a box to box?
Carrick was more box to box. He was more technical.
Yeah.
I can't think of who was there. Anyone else good at DMs in that period?
I think Mascherano, but I don't think he was around long enough.
No, I think it's one man for me. I know, and one man for me pitted by Man United. The fact that he. In big games, I remember I know we're talking about Premiership here, but I remember the big games, I think it was 99, they played Juventus. We had a very good Juventus, and Keane scored twice, and that's and he just epitomised carrying United to the semi-final of the Champions League, and the fact that he, even when Vieira came against Keane had Vieira. There's that famous match where he said, "I'll see you outside," and that game he dominated Vieira. He had him in his back pocket. And Keane was very good technical. He could score good goals. There was times he scored really good goals. He had the temper, but that's what you love about Roy Keane. And even now as a punditry, I think I love Roy Keane's punditry because he's no nonsense. Say how it is. So for me, Roy Keane is my DM. There's no one else that have than Roy Keane. Vieira's a good shout. And if Roy Keane wasn't there, Vieira would be my shout because I loved Vieira. But Roy Keane just was an animal.
Ian Francis, though, like he says, we did name it the Makelele role. He's got a point there. He's got a point.
Yeah, Makelele was really good.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but I think Makelele was better at Madrid than he was at Chelsea.
Yeah.
He named that Makelele role became the Makelele role when he was at Real Madrid because he was dominant for them. He was good at Chelsea, but I don't think he was at the same level as he was at Real Madrid. To me.
Okay.
Right. And Dobego, who do you got?
Well, I'm playing with a double 6.
Okay.
Yeah. The first one. Should I mention both?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm playing Gerrard and Lampard.
Ooh!
Ooh.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. So
Okay, first
go
of all,
ahead.
before you guys go ahead about defending in the midfield, Gerrard and Lampard, the way they played for the badge, I believe they'll do the job box to box.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They'll always play for the
Last
badge.
question, does it worry you about the fact they couldn't do it for England?
Mm,
Because they played them as a two, and it struggled. It didn't work for England because they didn't know when to go forward, when to go back. Oh yes, Ian versus Fernandinho as well for DM. As good as Fernandinho was, I still would have Fernandinho over him.
ooh, that's a good shout.
He was on my honorable mention list. He was on my honorable mention list, but
yeah. But yeah, go ahead. So, does that concern you the fact they couldn't do it together for England, or do you think it was just?
I did think about that, but then England. There's a curse there at England. So, but I think when we talk Premier League, these are the first midfielders that came to your mind at that time. At their prime, they're unplayable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see that. You go ahead, Steve.
So I mean, well, homie, I had the same mindset as you. So the guys that I was thinking about for this position for me was because I was doing 1-6 and then kind of like not necessarily an 8 and a 10, but just two more attacking minded midfielders. But for me, it came down to either Roy Keane. I was thinking Fernandinho. I was thinking Vieira. And I completely agree with everything that you said on your assessment with homie. Like, I think it has to be Keane, which when you think about a guy that can just strike fear in the midfield, Roy Keane does that. He's loud, he's physical, but then he's also so talented. And just another guy with some tremendous leadership. So for me, I actually originally had Vieira as my starter. And then I just thought more about it, and I was like, "This is my Man United bias, just showing." So I did a late minute sub. So Roy Keane is my starter. He's not my captain though. That's for damn sure.
We also had missed out. Emmanuel Petit is a good shout. Didi Hamann.
Didi was a good option too. I thought about Didi, but I just think the other guys just did a little bit more.
Who else was there? Pretty sure we're missing someone else that was in that early period with the DM.
Probably.
Because when we say Premiership, we're talking the whole Premiership era, right?
Yeah.
The Premiership started. So there's a lot, there must have been someone that was good. Obviously, probably David Barry was good for Newcastle.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember who, that must be early period then. So there must have been. I can't remember the probably other names missing, but I can't remember. I can't think. Going back to the 90s, because when the Premiership would have been 1991, 92, that period.
I just want to know what are your thoughts on Gareth Barry?
Barry, I think he's good, but I wouldn't have him in my team or my bench. But I think he was a good player. He was reliable, but I think when I think of other players that there were, he doesn't probably get in. But I think the thing is, there's so many good players I'm thinking about that I think, how do I get in the team? How do I get them in the team? And I think it's gonna be difficult, especially when you get to attackers now, the attack more players, or and because they're playing a 4-3-3, there are players you probably can't play in there that you think, well, people would say they should be in your team.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about I quickly thought about him, but dismissed him kind of quickly. Like Gilberto Silva.
Oh, he was good.
He was really good. He was really good. And going back to your question, though, Indobago, about Gareth Barry. Gareth Barry reminds me of he kind of just reminds me of like a James Milner before James Milner.
Yeah,
like the guy is super solid. Like maybe doesn't excel at anything individually, but a guy that you can just rely on in every single game to go in and do his job. Like because he was just so well rounded, like he definitely deserves to like be part of this conversation, just because I think he can just do everything. But because he didn't, in my opinion, he didn't like super excel at anything. It was just hard for him to find a spot in the team. But well, homie, let's go to you next, since we got two of Inobego's midfielders. Who's your next midfielder in the team?
So this is where it gets complicated, because there's that massive debate all the time from United, Chelsea, Liverpool players, fans, like who's the better between Scholes, Gerrard, Lampard. That's where it becomes difficult, because I have to admit Scholes is a fantastic player. He might not be able to tackle, but like Zidane said, I think Zidane said Scholes was the best player he'd seen. And everyone rated Scholes, how good he was, how he scores goals. Like he was phenomenal, and he was a key player for United in winning the treble, winning the county titles. He was very good. And then obviously Lampard, you can't disrespect Lampard's goal scoring record. Like we talk about Cherry Mr. Chelsea, but you're talking about Lampard. Lampard was Mr. Chelsea. Yeah. Although he came from West Ham, it was a legend for Chelsea. City tried to steal him, call him the legend. To the laugh, calling Lampard the legend after one season. But Lampard was phenomenal. So I think I can't leave out my captain though. He's not going to be my captain for today, but he's my captain of my club. So my next one is going to be controversial. I know a lot of United fans are going to be being biased, but my next one is Steven Gerrard. Like I've got to have Steven Gerrard in there. Like Roy Keane's going to give him the platform to do what he does, be box to box and dominate and go forward and score goals, and will bark orders at them, because Roy Keane didn't take any nonsense for anyone, and he'll bark orders at them and tell them what's good enough, and keep them in line to do the defensive stuff. So that'll just give Gerrard the freedom to bomb forward and do his goal scoring stuff. So yeah, my first one is Steven Gerrard, captain, fantastic. Can't leave him out.
Captain, fantastic. That is absolutely. So for me, so I'm just going to put both of mine together here for my last two midfielders. I also have Captain Fantastic, Steven Gerrard. He is my captain of the team as well. Like Wayne Rooney said, when they were playing for England, so many people had to, they always leaned on Gerrard to lift them up. He always seemed to lift them up when they needed it the most. So I'm going to say Steven Gerrard, and then I don't know if this guy really fits with having Keane and Gerrard in there, but I think Paul Scholes was awesome. For me, it came down to Scholes or Lampard. I chose to go with Paul Scholes. So I have Scholes.
Yeah, actually, it's a difficult one, because it's so hard to say who, when people say who's a better player, because Scholes' prime was most before Lampard and Gerrard came onto the scene, really. It was in his late stages when Lampard and Gerrard broke in. But he was phenomenal for United. Lampard, I think I'm going to go for Lampard. Not because I think it's better than Scholes, but I just think I can't dispute the amount of goals Lampard scored in the Premiership, and he wasn't even a striker. His record is ridiculous. And he was, the man when Chelsea needed a goal or assist, Lampard came up. Amount of times, didn't matter who they're playing. He was. Yes, it is got a good point. Fabregas was outstanding at Arsenal. He was outstanding. There's the other good players like Essien was outstanding. Who else is there?
Honestly, David Silva deserves to be in the conversation as well.
Silva. Yeah, Silva was very good.
Consistent
honestly,
as well.
This is where it's tough, right? Because we're playing a 4-3-3, it kind of takes away a lot of the different guys that you could put in there. Because if you play a 4-4-2, this is probably where we'd be having conversations about like Giggs, for example. He'd probably be in the conversation for outside mid. Wayne Rooney might be in the conversation for outside mid. So it's very interesting that like you can't really include these guys in a 4-3-3 because they're probably not technically good enough to play out on the left wing or right wing offensively, but if they played more in a midfield role, they'd probably fit into that spot. So it's very interesting. But like Fabregas, again, yeah, he was another guy on my list. He was in my conversations as a guy that I'd potentially add in there. He just missed the team for me because, I mean, you'll see why when you get to my bench. But ultimately, yeah, it's again, a lot of controversy is going to be around this. But I think we need in the Bego, we need your last midfielder. Who you got?
Okay, this is for my creativity from the midfield. It had to be Dennis Bergkamp.
Ooh, okay.
From midfield, 'cause I was thinking back as a forward more. Okay, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I had to throw Bergkamp in there because, nowadays we play against teams that park the bus and all that. And when I think of the way Beckham played, so sleek in the way he played and always had a trick up his sleeve. He was always looking to create something. And yeah, for that creative role, I'd have him in there.
Also forgetting Zola. I thought Zola was very good at Chelsea.
Zola was good. Zola was good. Yeah, that's another good shout. Xavi Alonso.
Yeah, I did think Alonso, but I don't think he had the same impact as the other ones for me. That's why I didn't have him there. De Bruyne.
KDB.
Yeah, De Bruyne.
Could be.
De Bruyne.
Yeah, he'll probably be on my bench, De Bruyne, but I don't think he's not my starting line. I just feel like I loved what Gerrard Lampard offered in terms of, those match-winning goals, and being able to carry their club over the line. And I would not say that De Bruyne does it. I just feel like the amount of times I don't think De Bruyne could. Of course, he's a world-class player, but he's surrounded by good players. I don't think De Bruyne could do what Gerrard did at Liverpool, like carry Liverpool over the line, win him like that stuff. I don't think he could do that. I don't think De Bruyne, although Lampard played with good players, but I still think Lampard shone in that Chelsea team, rather than him just being amongst good players. Well, I think De Bruyne shines in that Chelsea City team, but he's also around good players that also, not maybe now this season, but previously, he had Aguero, all the other players that were all shining. And also we've seen at times with De Bruyne, when the chips are down for Man City in the Champions League, he's not there to be found. He goes missing. Yeah, there's big moments. Even for Belgium, chips are down. He ain't there to be seen. He's good when the man, he's good obviously, but that's why I just feel like he met my bench instead. So it's difficult.
I gotta say though, the one thing about Lampard too is that I have one of Steven Gerrard's like autobiographies or biography of Steven Gerrard, and he even says that a guy like Frank Lampard really transformed that position. He was really the first midfielder to start scoring 10 goals a season from not from penalty kicks, from open play consistently. He is really the guy that was the first one to do it in the Premier League. And that's why now you're seeing the Bruno Fernandez's and the KDBs of the world. Like Lampard was the first one, and you definitely have to give him credit for that. That's 100% true.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, go ahead. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's it. So moving on to the forward line, this is where it gets complicated. It's tricky.
Yeah. This is honestly, I was so excited to get to this point because this is where we're all going to get ripped apart on Twitter. This is it, because there's so many different guys that you can go with. And again, because you play a 4-3-3, it's going to be very different because, do you play a striker out of position and put him out on the wing? Do you go with true wingers at those positions? And I know I, for one, am probably going to get ripped apart from my team, especially who makes the bench and that kind of a thing. But like this is where you play a 4-2-2 or 4-3-3, and the midfield and forwards just look vastly different depending on what you go with. So let's get to it. Let's start with right wing. Right wingers. Indobago, let's start with you. Who you got at right wing?
Ryan Giggs.
Giggsy. All right.
Yeah.
Right wing.
I think
Go anyway. Sorry, I was just thinking out loud. Go ahead.
yeah, if we look at the way Giggs played, he took on players in the stats too, the amount of assists that he got. Yeah. I think that was quite impressive. And the way he just took on players, he wasn't afraid. He was so direct with the way he took on players. You never know what he'll do, whether he'll go for a cross, whether he'll take you down the line. It was difficult to play against.
Yeah, Giggs. So I again because we went with a 4-3-3. I saw him more of an outside mid more than I saw him as a winger. So he didn't even make my team. He's somebody I had conversations about. I was like, for me, and that's my problem. If I played a 4-4-2, he would have been a starter on my team. But because we're playing a 4-3-3, he's not even making my team, which is kind of crazy. He's definitely very talented. I think. Hey, I'm not going to blame you for putting him on your team. I think he's a worthy player. He's definitely one of the best Premier League players at his position of all time. Might be unpopular, but my starting right winger is Mo Salah. Like, again, no, he hasn't done it he's only been doing it for 4 years, but he has the goal record. He has literally transformed Liverpool. Like, his impact can't be denied, and he is definitely, when you look at his stats compared to a guy like, for instance, Ronaldo's stats, when you look at the amount of games, it's a mirror almost. So I think Salah's deserving of it, and I'm going to give it to Mo Salah.
How many years now? It's been 4 years.
Yeah, it's been 4 years now. Yeah.
Okay.
So what do you think, homie?
This is so hard. The spotlights. I'm not going to be conventional in a sense. Like, I'm putting players in because I want them in the team, rather than thinking that in the front line, rather than thinking that they might work in the system. I just want them in the team because I think good players will know how to work together eventually. Yeah, it will mold itself. They'll know how to play. They'll know how to play with each other.
All right, so this is going to be controversial. I can tell with this build-up. So what do we? Before you even get to it, homie, before you say it, I'm gonna do it. I'm dropping a hot take because I know it's gonna be something that's gonna be controversial. So what do you got for us? Who's your left wing? All right, who's your right wing? Excuse me.
So I'm gonna fit him in because I think he has to be in the team, and for me, I'm going to try and fit him in somehow. So my right wing, although he might not have played that much, I don't think he played that much, is going to be Thierry Henry there because he has to be in the team.
Okay.
Because the reason why I'm saying that is because I'm going for goals as a front three. So yes, I get Salah. I get you would say Salah. And I'm not disputing it, but I just think I think the one thing that I would say is Salah. I think some of the other players I'm going to mention played in a harder period of the Premiership. I think there was more better teams, more better players, better defenders. I think right now, if you think we defend the amount of defenders that the players are playing against, I don't think the standard of defenders is that high. But I think when Henry or the other players played, probably one player that might be controversial. People say, "Well, how are you saying that when he's played not bad?" I'm putting him in there when it comes to it because his goal scoring record because he can't be disputed. But I think Henry played a much more better players, much more hard time.
Henry did. I mean, he was mainly a striker, but he did have a few games where he was playing out in the wing. Like he did have it wasn't often, but he did play out in the wing at times. So that's not that crazy.
And plus, I think he scored was it 30 goals for Barcelona when he played wing? Because they had Messi, Eto'o, and he was in the wing, and he still scored 30 goals at all competitions. So Yeah, that's what I have to have Henry. I can't have an all-time team with not Henry in the team after the impact he had. It's madness if I did that for me.
Yeah, I mean he was a beast, and he's not in my starting 11. He's on my bench just because I tried to keep it, formation specific with having wingers and a striker and everything. So to go to striker, this was the hardest one for me because I was thinking of Thierry Henry, I was thinking of Alan Shearer, I was thinking of Wayne Rooney, Cantona, Suarez, Aguero. All those guys came to mind, but for me, I'm starting with Alan Shearer as striker. It was tough for me. It ended up coming down to Shearer or Henry, and then Aguero was my third option. I just think if Aguero didn't have the injury issues that he had in the Premier League, he would be considered one of the best Premier League players of all time, in my opinion. But just availability is an ability. Henry seemed to be a little bit more healthy. Alan Shearer, obviously, we all know how good he was. So Alan Shearer for me is my striker.
Yeah, I think for me, I went for Shearer because I can't have the all-time most goal scorer in the Premiership ever not in the team. It doesn't make sense to me. There's no way I could put any other striker in there over Shearer because I think as well. I think Shearer's problem as well was the fact that when he was at Blackburn, he got injured. He was one hell of a player. He was scoring long-range goals regularly. Like, he was banging in 30 goals a season at Blackburn. Then he had that knee injury that meant he couldn't take long shots anymore. And otherwise, he was phenomenal at Blackburn. I know obviously tipped him then to go Man United. I don't know why he turned United down in the end, but he was outstanding there. When he went to Newcastle, he came as more of a goal scorer, poacher that scores goals. And he couldn't really do the goals he did before pre-injury. But he still scored a ton of goals. He was still your man, international level, England, club level, where you give Shearer half a chance, he's going to bang you a goal. He's going to attack, he's going to score. So, I have to have Shearer in there because he was he's an all-time goal scorer ever.
All right, Neville, who you got?
My options, were the usual Aguero, Suarez, Rooney. I just forgot the other one. But then I decided to Michael Owen. But then
okay. Michael Owen.
I'm not happy with Owen because we know what he did.
Yep.
So I have to go with Wayne Rooney. If we look at the...
I'm going to say Michael Owen or Wayne Rooney?
Wayne Rooney.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, if we look at the goals and assists that he got, and then we look at the type of goals that he scored, it's not like he's got tap-ins and all that. We're talking worldies, long range, everything. He had everything. He was a passer. Maybe played like Bobby, but then a more clinical one.
Yeah, I thought about Rooney too, just because when you think about, after that, the Roy Keane era and that era of United, when you think about Man United, for me, and I would really just think about Wayne Rooney. He's one of the first names that comes to mind for me when you think about just Man United as a club and just the long history that he had there, the amazing goals that he scored. I still remember that bicycle kick he scored against City, that absolute beauty.
Yeah.
He is absolute stud, and I don't think you can go wrong with having him in your starting 11. He was workhorse. He tracked back defensively, busted his butt. Definitely a good choice. Ian Francis throwing out Drogba. I thought about Drogba too. I just think even guys like Rooney, those guys, I think they were a little bit ahead of Drogba, even though there was a couple of years there where Drogba was an absolute assassin.
Who's your final forward?
So on the left wing, I have Cristiano. I put Ronaldo out on the left wing. I just think when I have a front three of Salah, Shearer, and Ronaldo, good luck stopping that. You can't stop that speed out on the wings, and then just the absolute finishing ability of Shearer. Good luck stopping that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I had Ronaldo too. You can't I cannot have Ronaldo in the team because of the impact he had at United. Like he revolutionized the Premiership in that period he was here at United. You know, like he was just oozed everything. Like oozed class, the goals he was scoring, the free kicks they were scoring were phenomenal. You know, like it was just, you know, I hate United, but when you watch Ronaldo, he made you love football watching it because of how he played. You know, and he was just, you know, the amount of times he destroyed the best teams around best teams, you know, or you know, even Liverpool, the amount of times he punished us, you know, so you know, the amount of times he used to destroy Arsenal all the time, you know, like just, you know, it was just a different level, and I was tempted because this is where it could have been controversial for me because there was a point where I was thinking I'm going to leave Ronaldo out and I'm going to put Bergkamp behind Henry and Shearer. 'Cause I thought, how can I leave Bergkamp out? Because Bergkamp as well, when he came into Milan, everyone wrote him off saying he was done, and Wenger got the magic out of him and made him like, you know, I don't think in terms of technical players, I don't think we've had a player like Bergkamp ever since the Premiership. You know how good he was, so it was hard not to put him in the team. But yeah, I had to go Ronaldo. So Henry, Shearer, Ronaldo. That's goals, skills, and you can't be stopping that.
You can't. No, that's good. That's a good team. And Nobago, your last forward here. Who do you got?
I really wanted Ronaldo in there, but then I had to go with Thierry Henry.
Okay, Thierry. All right. Interesting.
Yeah, we've already spoken about Henry, but about the way he took on defenders. Every time he shot, you expected a goal from him, and the way he was clinical, I think he really deserves a shout. I really wanted Ronaldo in there, but then my choice personally, I would have to go with Henry.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's Henry's a guy he can definitely play out on the wing. Obviously, we know he's one of the best forwards of all. You know, he's one of the best forwards of all time. That's for damn sure. But yeah, so it's an interesting conversation because I think especially the front three, I think there's so many different combinations that people could go with. So many different shouts, so many different people. I mean, so many players that like I think if we put 10 people in a room, 10 people would have 10 different teams. You know what I mean? Like it's just one of those things where up front, especially recently, there's been a lot of talented guys who came through here. And that's why my bench is probably going to be a little toxic for some folks.
Bench.
Yeah, so now we're going to just say 5 bench players of guys who didn't quite make the starting 11 for you, but would be on the bench, guys that would get subbed in. So I'll just rattle off my 5 real quick. So I had Thierry Henry, I had Frank Lampard, I had Patrick Vieira, Vincent Kompany, and then this is the one that I think I might get a little slack on. I have Eden Hazard because just how he played at Chelsea. Again, I needed a winger off the bench, and he is a guy that when he was at Chelsea, he was the system. He wasn't always getting the goals and assists, but they got him the ball early, and he was the guy that created everything for those teams. So that's my 5. Yeah, Henry, Hazard, Lampard, Kompany, and Vieira are my 5 bench players.
Your goalkeeper?
No, I mean, my second goalie would have been Sheck, without a question. But I like to think that Schmeichel wouldn't get hurt in a game, and I wouldn't need a backup goalie.
For my bench, I think I'd have to go with Nemanja Vidic. Ronaldo is in there. Gianfranco Zola also has to be in there.
Good shout.
Suarez, Luis Suarez. For the 5th one, I'll go with Paul Scholes.
Scholes.
Yeah.
All right. I like that. Honestly, I thought about Suarez too because when he was here, he was absolutely deadly. But I just when I looked at the other guys there, he didn't do it long enough. He was on the team long enough. But I think while he was there, he was probably the best striker in the Premier League. There's no question about that. He was absolutely on fire. But interesting, Zola. I'm happy you included Zola. Somebody had to include Zola on their team. I'm happy that you did. And I think you have a nice, well-rounded bench as well. So good stuff there. Well, homie, what do you got?
It's difficult. I'm struggling with this one. My bench. Let me think. Struggling my fifth one. I think I'm missing someone that's really good that has to be in the team.
How do you not have this ready to go, homie?
Because it's so difficult the bench. Because I was thinking
there's a question here about Gareth Bale.
Yeah, again, for me, just didn't do it long enough. Bale, Omar, it's a good shout. Definitely worthy of bringing up. But
I'll probably have Bale at left.
Bale.
Okay, I think I've got it. Okay, so I did have a goalkeeper, but I changed it. So I'm gonna, because I'm thinking about my adaptation, be able to change formation when I need it. So I had Company on the bench because I think in case I want to play over three but back, I can do that with Company, Terry Ferdinand. I also had Vieira in case I want to do like a double pivot with Kane and Vieira. And maybe push one of Lampard up top, further forward. I had to have Bergkamp in there because I think Bergkamp just revolutionised. He helped propel Arsenal to that massive rival with United. Like if he wasn't there, I don't think Arsenal would have been pushing United at that point early on when he won in '98. Like Bergkamp was just, that Leicester hat trick. The Newcastle goal, did it at international level, he's genius. My next one is Aguero. I have to have Aguero. I think like as you said before, if injuries hadn't hurt Aguero, he probably would have maybe caught up with Shearer, maybe outscored him. And so you have to agree that Aguero was phenomenal, in terms of when he's in prime. Mm-hmm. The last one, I toyed between the two. And I couldn't decide between KDB and Scholes, so I went for Scholes because of I loved Scholes when he was at United in that period under Ferguson. He might not have got many assists as De Bruyne did, but again, I feel that Scholes has played in a harder era. He was playing against much better teams around Europe. And in the Premiership, I think he played much harder. I think no taking away from De Bruyne, but I think the teams he's facing now, players he's facing now, are not as good as they were when Scholes was playing his prime. Because Scholes was playing around when there's like prime Zidane, prime Del Piero, all those kind of players, and those players like Zidane saying that Scholes was world class, was the best player in Europe and stuff like, much more harder. So that's my bench.
Whew. Well, all these teams are pretty solid. I think when we get to the manager, I think we all know who we go with for the team for the manager, right?
Yeah, there's only one man for me. And it's not Mr. Bowlhead at the Etihad right now.
You said it's not him, or it is him?
It's not him. It's not Mr.
Yeah.
Bowlhead at the Etihad.
Oh no, it's not. It's definitely not Guardiola. No, absolutely not.
Well, some City fans would like you to think he's the best manager of all time in Premiership.
No, it's Sir Alex. Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that he would just boss the sideline, they literally get referees to change their decisions. Like, come on, that is the perfect guy I mean, he's half the reason for the Man United bias, so got to give him credit for that.
He still changes the decisions from the stands, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Just like you said. But my question is, obviously we don't do like runner-up manager because Sir Alex Ferguson was just a clear choice. I think it's a better conversation though. Who would be your second option if you couldn't do Sir Alex Ferguson? Because obviously you got guys like Wenger, you got Mourinho's glory days, Guardiola.
My second guy would probably be Wenger, purely because the impact he had in English football. So when he came to England, they weren't doing like dietitian and all that kind of stuff. You know, he brought that to England and like kind of revolutionized football. You know, he brought yes, obviously Wenger kind of tailed off towards the end, but he revolutionized football. You know, I think, and he did it on a shoestring budget. But no one had heard of Vieira. He brought Vieira from like obscurity or petite and created them. Mark Overmars was finished. You know, he had that massive injury at Ajax. Everything Overmars finished. But he's the player that we missed out because Overmars was outstanding at Arsenal in that period when he joined Arsenal.
Yeah.
So I know people might say Mourinho because of what he done, but Mourinho had unlimited money. Guardiola had unlimited money. I think just Wenger, in terms of the mentality he got and how he changed football, would be my second manager. The amount of league titles he won, second manager.
Yeah, I think Wenger for me too. Just Mr. Consistency. Sure, it's tough at the end there, but hey, he also managed the Invincibles. They had a ton of ties for sure, but yeah, he had a hell of a career. That's for sure. I think if you asked Arsenal fans now if they take him back, I bet a lot of them would say yes. Ian Francis, he nailed the order for me. I think that's the exact order I would go, just because you can argue Klopp over Jose, but Jose early on at Chelsea, those teams were before FFP financial fair play was the thing, and they literally bought their team, but honestly that team was unbelievably defensively sound. Gotta give him credit for that, but this was a ton of fun. When we post these tweets, what'd you say?
There's some tough mentions we missed out. Like, someone think, would you have Beckham in the team?
Well, I mean,
because
I see that was my thing is like if we played a 4-4-2, he probably starts in my team. He probably starts at outside mid, but like because we went with the 4-3-3, I didn't want to have him out on the wing, and I'd rather have the guys that I mentioned in my midfield three. So like and then if you play two strikers, then like I'd probably get Aguero into my team. So it's just like you can go so many different directions, so many different combinations, especially if you play guys outside of their like true striker position and put them out on the wing, something like that. I don't think there's a wrong answer, but I'm really excited to get feedback from other people when we post these on Twitter to see. I mean, I'm sure all of us are going to get ripped apart by different people. But I just think that when you think about it, you can just go with a number of different combinations, and that's why this is just a lot of fun to do while we have 3 weeks until Liverpool plays again.
Well, I think our next one we should do. So as I said, I think our next one we should do is your favorite '90s team based in Europe.
All of Europe? Oh, jeez.
All of Europe based '90s, but we'll say from say 90. I think it's going to be difficult. We'll say from 1990 to 2000, all time best. Because then that'd be fun because you're thinking about Zidane, Figo, Romario, all those kind of players. Thuram, Nesta.
Ronaldo.
Do that next time. Favorite.
That'd be a good one. Yeah. So everyone in the chat, we appreciate you guys. Except you guys simping over Sophie. It's like 3 straight episodes. You guys gotta get over that.
Just one more question.
Yeah.
Just one more question. You spoke about Aguero being on the team and his career being, destroyed by injuries. If we're bringing that point, can't we bring Daniel Sturridge to the conversation?
That's an interesting point because when he was at Liverpool, he was unbelievable for those 2 seasons until he got hurt. But my thing is with Aguero, like even despite the injuries, he's had a better career than most people. My thing is just like if he didn't have the injuries, he'd be in the same conversation as people already have him in the conversation with like with Henry up there, like especially City fans, they rave about him, and like obviously Aguero is an unbelievable player. Like if he didn't get injured, I think he literally would be considered the best striker in the Premier League because he's still that good, which is absolutely crazy. But when you think about Sturridge, I don't know because like I wouldn't take Sturridge over Suarez, so that makes it hard. And I think I would still even take like a guy like Michael Owen, Wayne Rooney. Like I would put Sturridge more on like Drogba's level than I would these other guys that we're mentioning. Like, what do you think about that?
Some people won't be happy.
I think is I get what you're saying, Sturridge. I do remember as well. I think Sturridge has the best goals to game ratio than Torres. All of those, like anyone, like he would have been. I think he was the quickest to get to 50 goals, for any Liverpool striker. So yeah, I do get it, and I think if he hadn't got injured, Sturridge could have gone into a legend big time because he had it all. Even when Suarez got injured, we were only still in that tie race because Sturridge carried us with his goals. The Villa goal, where he did that quick turn and took around the keeper. I think it's difficult, but I probably, because of the injuries, I wouldn't put him in there. And the reason why I'd still keep Aguero, because I think Aguero scored a massive more amount of goals than Sturridge did. But I was also going to think about Van Persie was outstanding.
Yeah, we didn't even mention Van Persie or Torres in this conversation.
Yeah, and the reason why I wouldn't say Suarez because I think Suarez only had one season, and that was a phenomenal season. It was only one season, and that's why I don't think I'd have my old-time team or even the bench because I don't think it's fair for people who've done it. And there's even other strikers. You're missing Andy Cole. He scored a ton of goals at Newcastle, Man United and Newcastle. Les Ferdinand, I think he's in the top 5 all-time goal scorers in the Premiership.
Van
Nistelrooy. So there's a lot of good players missed out. And that's why, as you said, because they did a 4-3-3, it's hard to put people in when there's a 4-3-3.
Yeah.
4-4-2, I would have definitely had Giggs and Beckham starting my 4-4-2.
Same. Same.
But it's difficult.
It is. Well, this was so much fun. All right, AK. You keep this up, we're gonna have to ban you. You gotta stop asking about Sophie. It's just getting uncomfortable at this point. She's a good friend. She comes on the podcast all the time. But if you keep this up, we're gonna have to give you a ban. So please just knock it off. Everyone else in the chat, we appreciate you guys. If you haven't yet, hit that like and subscribe button. We appreciate it. We'll have more specials coming out with the international break. So just keep out for that. We have some awesome collaborations coming. But Indobago, thanks for joining us, man. This was so much fun. If you guys haven't yet, go give him a follow, sir_NTO. Awesome guy. Appreciate you coming on. This was a long time coming, sounds like. So super happy about that. And thanks again for coming on.
Hey, thank you a lot.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
I was
going to say, make sure you like and subscribe.
Exactly. It helps more Reds fans see this. So up to Reds. We'll see you guys later.
Up the Reds.